because I think that's where there's another. Todd's talked about his tiers. To me, that's where a big tier falls off. And if they like certain players, when you think about the defensive players, offensive players, if you go below 13 and the board peels off absolutely against the way you hope it does, right, you could be sitting there going, well, why did I pick up the extra pick? I don't need that. I'd rather have one of those players. So I think 13's as far as it can go back, just perfect timing there to see, hey, that's Arizona or that's obviously the Cleveland Browns. But I think at 5 or at 13, you could still get a great player. Say a Marlon Humphreys there at 13, and you end up picking up an extra 2 or maybe a 2 and a 3. Well worth it if it's the Tennessee Titans and they can make that trade happen.
I just feel like they're in a great spot that if they sit where they are, yep, they could take players who should be picked at 5th and 18th. And if they do make a move, then you're adding draft capital. They don't have a second-round pick. That's something you could bring back in a trade. And this is a draft that is so deep. And for a team that is sort of rising and rising, they could add potentially a handful of starters to this year's class.
All right, Todd, take us through it.
You look through, I mean, 5 and 18, as you both are saying, I think defensive back makes a lot of sense if they're sitting here. They also could go defensive line like a Solomon Thomas. Mm-hmm. Let's say they go Marshawn Lattimore at 5.
And he merits that pick completely.
Absolutely. And most teams I talk to, they're fine with the hamstrings. They think that they've figured out how to manage them. At 18, you have to assume at this point, probably Corey Davis. Just assume maybe Mike Williams is there, but probably the second receiver on your board is what you have to assume there. So this is a nice combination. You like it, but you now don't have a second-round pick because of the deal last year where you had to move back up to go get Jack Conklin, which worked out wonderfully. Yep. They've killed the first draft with John Robinson as the GM, and now they could be in position for a second straight year to exploit a team that is quarterback hungry. So if they wind up making a deal to move back, let's say to 12, right? They move back to 12 instead of just getting the 2 players. Here we go, 12. I think now you first pick here, and you're probably going to look at Mike Williams and say, you know what, we're going to get the best receiver on the board and give it to Marcus Mariota. Then we move back, and I don't think it's a massive difference in terms of where you're getting at the cornerback position. You're still going to get one of these really good cornerbacks. Could be defensive line as well, but let's focus on corner now. Let's say a Marlon Humphrey from Alabama. And plus, you also have traded into the second round, not sure which pick. We'll see what the details would be. But let's say you're somewhere in this range, and now you could go address defensive line with a player like a Chris Wormley. Yep. You could address the linebacker position. Zach Cunningham from Vanderbilt doesn't want to. There we go. So the point being, you could address 2 spots on the defense and get the best wide receiver, and maybe